It's Tuesday, February 23rd, and you're at the Quilter's Nook for Focus on Fundamentals. So for the next few weeks, we are going to go back to the basics, literally, and talk about half square triangles. I want this to be an interactive deal, so if you have questions as I go along, please ask, and Linda will ask me, and we'll hopefully get those questions answered. You can always post questions later. This will be recorded so that you can go back on our YouTube page and watch it again if you need to, okay? So as you can see on the wall, our project is a really cute half square triangle project made out of nothing but squares and half square triangles, okay? You may look at that and go, oh, no, that's too hard. I can't do that. But I'm here to show you that you can. Half square triangles are the basic building block of any quilt that you will ever do, okay? It's the first unit you will learn, and with all the variations there are, you can make 1,000 different quilts with just one unit. So let me grab a unit here real quick. These are the 3 units that this quilt is comprised of. I gave you cutting instructions if you want to follow along with me. That's great. If you want to post pictures of your fabric, that's great too. I'm using it as my background, and this is a 4.5-inch square, and these are half square triangles that we will trim to 4.5 inches. You have 2 different colors. We're doing a red and a white and a blue and a white. That's it, okay? So it's not that hard, but let me show you all the little tips and tricks that we're going to do along the way. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is cut a 5-inch strip of fabric. Now let's cut our 4.5-inch first. These are our 4.5-inch squares that we're going to use, and they're going to stay as squares. Okay, so we're going to cut a 4.5-inch strip of fabric. Now, when you cut fabric, if you'll notice, I am on a board that has no lines on it, and that's for a reason. Because when I do strips, I use the fabric as my guide, excuse me, instead of the mat. And I'll show you the difference here in a minute, okay? So what you're going to do is line up, pick a line on your ruler and line it up. And then we're going to take the 4.5-inch line, and it's going to run all the way up the side of your unit, side of your strip, okay? That's how we're going to do that. And then you're going to take your rotary cutter, holding on to your ruler, and cut. Okay, that's our 4.5-inch strip for our squares. Now, very carefully, we're going to take this and turn it. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to put the fabric to my left right now because I want to get rid of this selvage. Okay. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to lay a line at the bottom of my strip, away from my selvage.
Explain what selvage is.
Selvage is the raw edges that are on the fabric, and they have little dots on them, and you don't want those little dots in your project. So we're going to get rid of those. So we're going to cut him off. Now, if you are left-handed, when we go to cut, if you are left-handed, you're going to leave this in this position with all your fabric to the left. If you are right-handed, you're going to turn it around nice and carefully because we want to keep this together. And you're going to put all your fabric to the right of you, okay? And we're going to keep this folded because we're going to be able to cut 2 squares at the same time. So we're going to do things a little bit faster. So this is 4.5 inches. So I'm going to take a line, and I like the dashed line because it's really, really small, really fine line, and I can line it up right against there and cut. Do not move this strip. This strip is nice and straight. We want to keep it that way. So let's just move the piece out from underneath. Okay, and then we're going to go again. 4.5, any line at the bottom, and your 4.5 line along the side, and you're going to trim. Okay? That's going to give you your 4.5-inch squares that we will use for this project. And you will need a total of 20 of these 4.5-inch squares, okay, for our project. Now we're going to cut a 5-inch square to use with our half square triangles. So again, I'm going to line up with the bottom of my fabric, and I'm going to line up the 5-inch line going all the way across my length of my fabric. Okay?
Right on the edge, like you always say.
Do what?
Right away on the edge, like you always say.
Yes, right on the edge. And we're going to cut. Again, we're going to trim off this selvage. So we'll come down here, pick a line, just so it stays even. So our selvages are going to be cut off, all those dots, which is what you want, or writing or whatever happens to be on that edge. And you're going to trim that off. Again, if you're left-handed, you're going to start here, and you're going to cut this way. If you're right-handed, we're going to flip him around and put our 5-inch along the side, pick a line along the bottom, right on that line, and we're going to cut. Okay? Those are your 5-inch squares for your half square triangles. You are going to need 22 5-inch background squares. Okay? Now, we are also going to need 5-inch squares of blue, in my case, and 5-inch squares of red. I am calling red fabric number 2. It's for our pinwheels effect that we're going to get on the project. And the blue, I'm calling fabric number 3. Okay? So, I think I have these all squared up, and I'm just going to double check. Yep, that's a 5-inch square, 5-inch strip, and there's a 5-inch strip. Okay, let's start with the red. I have writing on my selvage, so I want to make sure I get rid of that. Plus there's dots. So I'm going to come down here and line him up and get rid of my selvage. Flip it around, keep it all nice and lined up. And we're going to cut some more 5-inch squares. Okay, right along the bottom, right along the side, and trim. For our red, you're going to cut 8 of these 5-inch squares, so you'll need 2 strips of fabric. And for the blue, you're going to need 14 5-inch squares, again 2 strips of fabric, okay, at 5 inches. Are we good so far? Okay. Now let's have some fun. We're going to start with our red and our white squares. Make sure you take your white squares and turn them so that they are wrong side up. Okay, you want the back of the fabric face up on your background strips. Okay, and mine's a tone on tone, so I just got to kind of look at it and make sure. Okay, everything's wrong side up. Now, one of the items that we use a lot around here is the Quilter's Magic Wand. This magic wand is a 1/2-inch piece of acrylic. And if you can, I don't know if you can Can you kind of see that? Yeah, you can see that laser line right through there. That's what we are going to use, and we are going to set that corner to corner, put that laser line right in the corner of your square. Now, what we're going to do is create sewing lines. Most patterns will tell you to draw a line corner to corner and to sew 1/4 inch on each side. That's fine if you want to do that. But everybody's 1/4 inch is a little bit different. Everybody's pencil is a little bit, could be a little bit thicker, and you're not going to get an accurate 1/4 inch. But this way, what you're going to do is take this magic wand and your mechanical pencil. You're not going to go up and down. You're going to go kind of sideways into it, and you're going to draw against that line. Okay? And move your hand, and you're going to draw against the other line. And when you do that, you have 2 lines that are exactly 1/4 inch from each side of your center line. Okay? When we do this, all of our units that we're making are oversized because we are going to be using the Tucker trimmer for this project. We're going to be trimming down using this tool, and we'll go through this tool next week when we go to trim our units down. But for right now, this is what we're going to use. And Deb's philosophy is to oversize, trim down to a perfect size. So that's what we're going to do. So we've oversized this block. When we go to make our half square triangles, you're going to take your red piece face up, your white piece face down so that your lines that you just drew were on top, and you are going to put them right sides together. If you choose to pin, I like to pin them together this way so that my sewing machine does not get in the way of my pins don't get in the way of my sewing machine. Okay? So this is what we're going to do. And we're going to go to the machine and we are going to sew on these lines. Okay? Questions? Everything's good? All right. If you have questions, please let me know. I'll stop. We'll go through them. Okay. Now, when we go to sew, the way I like to do it is I like to sew with my fabric right at the edge of my presser foot. Okay? Now, if you see my needle, what I've done is I've drawn a 1/4 inch line from the edge of my fabric as a test, because I want to be able to sew on that line, keeping my fabric lined up. So this needle right now is too far away from that line. Okay, I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's a little farther away from the line. So what I need to do, I can move my needle position. So I'm going to move my needle position until, there we go, until that needle is directly on that line. See that? You can come in here a little closer if you want to.
I think I've got it pretty good.
There we go. Now I know my needle is in the right position for me to sew. That's how we get a good 1/4 inch. Okay, so you can always test your fabric, test your needle position by doing that, okay? So this is what we're going to do as we sew our project together. I just wanted to show you that right up front. That's how I do that. For this sewing, what we're going to do is sew on the line. There is no center or 1/4 inch that you need to do. So you can just keep your needle in the center. What I like to do also is use a leader, a little piece of fabric, because I don't want my block to be sucked down into my machine. And I'm sure you guys have done that before, and you go, oh, darn. Now that it gets all wrinkled up. So what I'm going to do, well, I don't want to do that. Do that. So I'm going to start on my leader, and I'm going to sew all the way off of it. Okay. Keeping my needle down. Now I'm going to take my piece, and I am going to push it right up to that needle. See that? Push right up to the needle so that the needle is right on my line. When you sew, your objective is to sew right on this line or just to the inside of the line. If you sew out here on this side of the line, your block is going to be too small. Okay? Like I said, everything is oversized, so we want to make sure that we have room to trim. So you can sew just to the inside of this line if you like. Okay, so let's see. And I'm sewing just to the inside. And I don't always sew perfect, so if you don't sew perfect, that's okay. But we want to kind of be consistent. And you want to stay as close to that line without going over it as possible. Okay? Now, my needle is down. I'm going to lift my presser foot, get my leader off of here. And I'm just going to rotate my block around, pull it out a little bit, and push it back in to the needle. Okay, we're back to that needle. And see, I didn't sew exactly on my line. I sewed a little to the inside. It's okay. It's all right. There's room built in here for error. So then I'm going to start again. Sew all the way down my line. And I'm done. Now, let me go draw another one for you real quick. And I'll show you how to chain piece. Just 1 second. Okay, so now I have another one ready. And I'm going to line him up. I'm not going to pin him, but if you want to pin, you can. I have sewn all the way off of this first unit. Okay, you can sew a couple off. It's okay. So this is kind of acting as your new leader. So I'm going to line him back up again without taking this first one off. And I'm just going to sew down the line. Now, needle is down, lift up my presser foot. Now I've got this guy attached, so I'm going to unattach him. Pull this out a little bit. See, I'm not a perfect sewer. So you don't have to be perfect, you just want to be close, okay? And then we're just going to keep going. And sew down your second line.
Okay, Marilyn wanted to know why use a leader on the first line, but not the second line, where you just turn it.
Because the machine has already been in a sewing mode, and as long as it's sewing, you can just keep adding new fabric underneath it without having to start a new leader. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Do you want to define what chain piecing is?
So chain piecing is where you keep sewing, like if this one hadn't been sewn yet. You're just going to link them together, and you're going to have your thread holding your pieces together. And it's a big chain. Okay, I cut my one off after I go, but if you want to do all of this line, turn it all around, and then do all of your second line, you can do that too. So does that kind of make sense? Okay, so now I'm done. I've got all my pieces sewn together, and now we need to trim them apart. And you're going to do this process for all 8 of your red squares and all 14 of your blue squares. Okay, everything's going to be matched up with a white square. So now we have our sewing lines. Now we got to cut them apart. So I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to line it up tip to tip in between my sewing lines. Okay. And trim. And now I have 2 oversized half square triangles.
Press to the dark.
Okay. We're gonna go over pressing and stuff next week. This is, I think, enough for everybody to, if you're following along. Okay, if you can get this far for next week, then we'll press and we'll trim and we'll do all that kind of good stuff next week. So, okay, so you're gonna cut them apart, and you'll have all these wonderful half square triangles. Okay. So that's a good start for our project. I hope you liked that. I hope you got some good information on that. If you need a magic wand, I have them in the store. Okay. If you want to use another product, there's others on the market. Fons and Porter's has a nice one. But this I like because I can see through it. Okay. So feel free to ask any questions, make any comments. This is where we're going to stop for today. So we've cut our squares, we've drawn our lines, we've sewn, and next week we will press all of our squares and trim them up using our chucker trimmer, okay? So until next time, have a wonderful day.